Hi. Well, it's Fair Week here, and you know what that means. Lots of activity, lots of things going on. As I mentioned before, I was in 4-H for 10 years, and also mentioned before I was a tomboy, so I did show cattle and I showed hogs. But today we're going to focus on the projects that I had inside. So I took foods for 10 years, and crafts. I did embroidery. Did crewel embroidery, and then just, I don't know, old-fashioned embroidery. I don't know what it's called. And but anyway, I liked foods the best. I enjoyed that. And when I was in 4-H, you had this manual to follow, and when you got so far along, you had to make meals for your family. And then they gave you sample meals, and you had to make those and then record, how you did and what they said. And so to this day, my brother says everyone should thank him because his stomach had to endure me learning to cook to be a good cook that I am today. And he's right. There's some stuff wasn't very good. But anyway, that was before you could get a box mix for this, that, or something else, so everything was from scratch. It was implied it was to be from scratch. I guess I don't know of anybody that I was in 4-H with that did anything differently than did it from scratch. So anyway, the first year when I was in 4-H, you had to have 6 cookies on this little paper plate, and they had to be the same size. That was hard, but my problem was having enough dough, because I ate it raw, to get the cookies made, in case I messed up, so I had enough of them. So everybody liked that year because, cookies pretty easy to make. The second year I was in 4-H, we had to make butter cakes. Now, butter cake it's a good cake. It was an 8x8 pan is what you made it in, but you couldn't ice it. It couldn't be iced, and so it had to be moist and good without icing. Just right outside our house, we had a sow lot out there. And so I bet those sows, they ate better than anybody. They had more dessert and more butter cakes than anybody. After a while, you just can't gag them down anymore. You practice and practice, you just can't do it anymore. So the third year was quick bread. So I think I made a banana nut bread, I believe, for that one. And that was easy. I didn't have any trouble with that. You get into year 4 and it starts to get a little bit tricky. Year 4, when I was in, you had to make those clover leaf dinner rolls. So that was a yeast roll. So you had to, knead the yeast because you didn't have the fancy mixers with the kneading hook, with the bread hook on it. So you had to do the kneading by hand. So, I actually started to really like working with yeast then, and I still do it today. I really like cooking with yeast and making cinnamon rolls. My family requests my cinnamon rolls all the time. And so I like working with yeast. But getting those little balls, you had to roll it in 3 little balls and then put it in the muffin pan and hope that it rose the same and it looked the same when it came out, So that wasn't too bad. Year 5 was a killer. It was awful. That was the year of an angel food cake. Well, you had to have a dozen eggs to make angel food cake, and you can't get any yolk in that or it just doesn't whip up. Well, the first one I made, you could have killed somebody with it if you'd have thrown it out. It was awful. It was terrible. And I said, it didn't rise. I don't know what I did, but it was a bad deal. Well, I got better, and they turned out okay. The thing about an angel food cake, when you make it from scratch, is it can have tunnels in it made from the air bubbles. So you got to be sure that you drop the pan on the counter, before you put it in the oven to make those air bubbles rise to the top, because you don't want a big tunnel where the judge cuts in there and sees that big old hole, and then that's not going to do very good. But I think angel food cake year might have been the year that we're making the meals for the family. And one of them, the recipes was grape tapioca. Now, I had no idea what grape tapioca was, but it was in there. And so, we decided, okay, we'll make the grape tapioca. It was terrible. I cooked it too long or something, but you put your spoon in the stuff and you tried to pull it out of the bowl and it stuck to it, and then you let go of the spoon, it slapped back down in there. There was no way you could have eaten that stuff. And of course, wasn't one to get my feelings hurt very easy. They said, this is terrible. It was awful. So the review in that book wasn't very good. Oh, that was funny. So anyway, the next year, I think, now this is where it starts to get a little fuzzy, I think was an iced layer cake. So I made a 3-layer toasted butter pecan cake. And, you know, you had to make the icing and everything. And I tell you, it was hot. We didn't have air conditioning then, you know, and I'm trying to ice this cake and it kept pulling up the crumbs from the cake as I'd already brushed them off and getting madder by the minute, but I didn't have any choice. I went ahead, every time I tried, it did the same thing. So, you know, when it came time for judging, I thought, oh boy, this is going to be a bad deal because she's going to say something about them crumbs in there. She thought I had gotten the pecans really chopped fine, and those were little pecans in there. And I said, oh yeah, good, I did good. So the girl that beat me that year, she had made a white cake with 7-minute icing. Now, if you don't know what 7-minute icing is, you need to look that up. It was hot, it was humid, and that icing held up. She did a great job. So she did really good on that. 7th and 8th years, I really don't know. I cannot remember what it was we were supposed to do. That doesn't stick in my memory. But pie sticks in my memory. And the only way I could make a pie crust was with lard. I tried with Crisco. I couldn't do it for anything. But then we had lard all the time because we'd butcher hogs, and so we had lard and had cracklings. So I got to where I was pretty good at pie. And I can't remember what kind of pie I took to the fair. You know, it had to be something that, you know, wasn't gonna, you know, go bad or whatever. They used to display a piece of it in the case. And then, you know, when I got up in those years like that, as soon as judging was over, I'd go over to the cattle barn and take it. You know, those guys just loved all that. They loved Foods Day, you know, because we brought all that stuff over. And those days, that's when the judging all happened the same week. Everything was the same week. The inside projects were judged in the morning. Then you had the livestock shows in the evening. So everything was done the same week. But I can tell you the best thing about making a pie, if your mom's ever made a pie for you, if you've made a pie, if your mother was from the South, probably, I don't know if everybody does it, were the pinwheels. I made a pie just the other day, and pinwheels are made out of the leftover pie dough. Oh, we just used to hope she had a bunch of it left over. You spread butter on that, sugar, cinnamon, and bake it. Oh, really good. They're the best right out of the oven. But that's the best thing about making a pie, as far as I'm concerned, are those pinwheels. And so then the last year was fancy yeast bread. And so I had a neighbor, a lady who had a recipe, and she said, now I'll give you this recipe, but I don't want you to share this with anyone. And I haven't to this day. I used to, and I made that and got grand champion on that. And for years I made that for my family for Christmas. That was our Christmas bread. It wasn't the standard Christmas breads everybody made, the candy cane or whatever. It was called an apricot flip, and it's really good. Actually, my son made the same thing when he took foods. I told him he needed to know how to cook. He may be a bachelor and need to know how to feed himself. And so anyway, he got grand champion as well with that same recipe. So, you know, good things about foods. I could sew. Mom wanted me to take sewing, but there was no way on earth I was going to get up there and do the fashion review. That was all one thing. If you did sewing, then you had to do the fashion review. Well, you know, I was a tomboy. There was no way I was getting up on that stage and walking around like a girl. I mean, it just wasn't happening. So anyway, so that's just a little bit of some of my 4-H fun. And we'll talk later in the week, and I'll tell you about some livestock and a couple of good stories about that, you know. So all to have fun and enjoy. But those kids that work on those projects in the building, you know, they really put a lot of time and effort in that, and they deserve recognition as well. So you have a good day.